Well, the season is upon us. A great time to kick back, relax, and spend time with family and friends. And I think I would like to conclude my year here on YouTube with probably the only thing I think would be suitable for the end of the year. What were you expecting? And no, I did not dress up for this. This is my work attire. So let's get a big question out of the way first. Why this locomotive specifically? Well, I like the GP30 and you're not my dad, so shut up. Second off, what the heck is Williams? Well, according to the Wikipedia, Williams was a brand of trains formed in 1971 by Jerry Williams, who would use the brand to create reproductions of classic Lionel and Ives trains after General Mills sold the tooling after the acquisition of the Lionel brand. Williams would acquire O-gauge tooling from Kusan in the 1980s, and they would shift their focus entirely to O-gauge, and they would sell their tin plate tooling to MTH Electric Trains, a company that was founded by an employee of Williams. Williams would continue to produce O-scale trains until 2007, when Bachmann would acquire the brand and the company would be rebranded to Williams by Bachmann, and they would continue to produce O-scale trains until this very day. Williams would release the GP30 in 2013, and it was the first ever newly tooled diesel locomotive under Bachmann's ownership of the brand. The locomotive comes in a big red box with the Williams by Bachmann logo adorning the top left corner. It's a box design that would be quite familiar to anyone who's ever purchased a Bachmann HO locomotive. Opening up the box, this locomotive is contained within styrofoam with styrene to protect the handrails. Out of the box, let me just say, this is a quite weighty locomotive. Putting it on the scale, it weighs in at 4 pounds, 8.5 ounces. So it's not quite Lionel post-war turbine levels of weight, but it's still very weighty. I attributed this to the entirely metal construction under that sleek body shell. Yes, that includes the fuel tank. One nitpick here on the fuel tank down here is this cylinder down here is just way too short. It really should come up to this point here on the locomotive. As one of my first O-gauge diesel locomotives, especially for a more scale one, I was shocked to find that the steps actually rotate with the trucks. This is a pretty common practice in O-gauge, as this GP30 is actually capable of navigating O31 curves, which was incredibly impressive to me for a locomotive that is much more scale than what I am used to. Mounted on the trucks are two metal operating couplers, opening by pulling down on this tab here. They're not my favorite couplers, but they have been very nice, and I've never had them decouple. Moving up, let's talk about the body. The Williams model is based on the Phase 2 version of the GP30 with the extended cab on the conductor's sides. This makes sense as the Bachmann Spectrum GP30 is also a Phase 2 version. Let's bring in the Spectrum GP30, and now it's pretty clear that these two are related. Same body style, both Phase 2s. They're virtually identical apart from the O-gauge version having nicer looking cooling fans and operating marker lights. Other changes, a very nice and real chain and a movable walkway. Props to both these features, they look absolutely fantastic. The handrails on this locomotive are also all metal, and they look absolutely fantastic. Popping the hood on the locomotive reveals two enormous Bachmann motors that make very good use of the space inside the body. Nestled between the motors is the Williams True Blast sound chip and speaker. This is not a DCC locomotive. True Blast is essentially an analog sound system, and I genuinely really like this. It keeps the model affordable, and I'm not super obsessed with command control and sound gimmicks anyway. So let's talk performance. I've never owned a more modern O-gauge locomotive, but this one was pretty easy to grasp. It runs just like any Lionel post-war locomotive with you powering up, powering down, and then powering up again to change direction. The lockout switch is located right in front of the rear truck on the bottom. The locomotive starts up by making sound, and it runs super fast, like stupid fast. This is less than 25% on the throttle. Here's full power on my 50-watt transformer if you are curious. Some serious hypercar level performance right there. Alright, so this model has sound. Let's talk about the True Blast sound chip. I'm not a fan. It just doesn't sound like a GP30. Here, take a listen. I might be wrong, but the sound from the real GP30 seems a bit deeper, and I cannot hear the faint whine from the turbocharger. The horn on this was apparently recorded from a GP10, and I will say, it is a nice sounding horn. I was not able to test the bell. I'm running with that basic MPC era 50-watt transformer, but from what I've heard at a show, it does sound correct for an EMD built unit. Now for the real kicker. I have no idea how or why, but the horn on this locomotive managed to jam itself on when in the forward direction only. Does not happen in neutral, does not happen in reverse. My whistle and horn controller wasn't even hooked up when this happened. It really annoyed me, so I ended up popping the hood and disconnecting the whole thing altogether. This not only got rid of the sounds, but actually made the locomotive run slower, and it gave me significantly better throttle control. It's a super quiet runner, and I'll be for sure keeping this way. This locomotive is a superb performer, with the hefty weight and the traction tires really going the extra mile for pulling power. This locomotive has no issues whatsoever pulling all of my cars. As claimed on the box, it can navigate 031 curves thanks to the trucks and pilots being the same piece. Williams isn't the only manufacturer to offer a GP30, so why would you pick this GP30 over the other ones? Lionel and MTH have both offered GP30s in O gauge, so what's so stand out about this one in particular? Well, to be real, the MTH and Lionel are better detailed, with the Lionel one easily being on top. The issue with those two once again comes down to my main issue with modern O gauge. It has to be command control. Command control models aren't cheap, and the cheapest O-gauge GP30 that I could find that was not a Williams product was an old conventional Lionel GP30 with some cosmetic damage. And that was still over $50 more than the Williams one, and this one here was brand new in box. Most other GP30s will run you double what I paid for this one, and they're used. The value for money on this Williams one is just incredibly good. This is by no means a perfect model. The pilots could use some extra detail, the cylinders above the fuel tank are too short, and the sound system is incredibly basic and kind of unreliable. But it's still well worth it. Williams sits in a weird spot in the O-gauge world of making conventionally controlled equipment in a world of command control only equipment. It's a locomotive that doesn't have party tricks, complicated tech, and it's really simple cosmetically. It's a GP30 and nothing else. It very much satisfies everything I wanted in an O-gauge GP30. And you know what? I know people might disagree here, but I see so much value in a locomotive like this that only includes the basics.